Alright, welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and the next installment of the Eduard 1/48 scale BF 109E3 Weekend Edition. So as you can see, where we left off last time, I was masking everything and temporarily installing the slats for paint. I really should be doing the same thing with the flaps, but there's no way really to do it without, messing up the locating tab. So I'm just gonna have to wing that one, but I'm sure it'll be fine because I think I can figure out what I need to do as far as the masking goes. Shouldn't be too hard. So we got that is ready. So let's talk a little bit about the paint. Okay, so as I noted, I am doing Hans Illner's 4th Staffel aircraft from August 3rd, 1940. And you can see it's got a pretty wonky looking paint job here, but keep in mind that it's not going to look like this because it should be a soft edge camo, so it's just going to be a lot of mottling and stuff like that. And what I'll basically do is I will replicate this same pattern on the other side, since there's no way of knowing what this is supposed to look like. So we've got this, and it's pretty basic. There's a yellow stripe on the top here. Shows the decal specific to this kit and where they go, including that one, which is the whole reason I'm doing this particular scheme. Then we have the wing scheme here, and it looks like it is hard edge camo, similar to this down here on this, but then with some different, with like some overspray on top of that, which is Lm2. Then underneath the whole aircraft is Lm65. Now this has got really large crosses on this one, and I'm not sure if I have any that are large enough. So I'm going to get out the decals that I have and take a look real quick. Okay, I do have some that are large enough, but I only have 2, and it looks like it takes 4. 2 on top and 2 on bottom of the really big insignia. So I may have to dig through my drawer and see if I have some more there. Alright, and looking at my decals, I only have, these aren't even really big enough, because these are supposed to span from here all the way to, from the edge of the wing here all the way back on the top and the bottom. They're really big. So I may have to look into ordering some because I don't have any extras. So anyway, let's carry on with the paint scheme for now. So right here it kind of breaks it down. Equipment are all stock E3s, stencils, decal instructions for optional placement of additional stencils. Chamberlain Raven was gray-green like Lm71, not brown as commonly illustrated. One would think the group badge would have been applied by stencil, making them all identical, but they were not. Okay, so for White 2, the one I'm doing, White 2 2 different times, shot down and repaired. This is the shot down version. Camouflage is Lm71, 02, and 65, with Lm02, 70, and 74 mottling. Yellow spinner misted with Lm70 or 71, Lm70 canopy framing and antenna mast. Yellow and white rudder with soft demarcation, so I don't have to tape that off. That's just going to be hand sprayed. Inch Stoffel number and fuselage cross toned down with RLM71. Group badge is dirty background, upper wings possibly mottled per white 1. Markings, possible oversized wing crosses. Okay, it says possible. Small fuselage crosses, early style swastikas. Reference B is same as aircraft reference A. Upper right wing body, I'm not going to read all that. Okay, in further reading, there is some doubt as to whether or not these large crosses were actually used on this aircraft, as shown illustrated here. Some reference photos do not show these Balkenkreuz overlapping the slats, the wing slats. So I think that's my out. I am going to use the larger crosses on the bottom and the regular size crosses on the top. Sweet. So anyway, first thing to do, however, is to shoot some primer. So let me get my black primer and my airbrush and everything all ready, and we'll get cracking on that. Actually, before I get into the paint and all that stuff, I still need to put those counterweights on the wings. Now I'm going to do that now. Against my better judgment, and I've got the counterweights and I think the pitot tube to do. So I'm going to cut those off and get them ready to glue in place there. Actually, I'm not going to glue those in place because of decals and stuff like that, and the pitot tube is going to be right where there's a decal. So I'm going to wait and do that after. It's going to be one of the very last things I do. So hopefully I won't lose those little parts in the meantime. So back to the paint. So the first thing I need to do, though, before I I did glue the antenna on, so hopefully I can keep that from breaking off. But the first thing I need to do is I need to actually paint RLM2 around the cockpit area, because whenever I take this canopy off, I want the RLM2, which is the interior color. Actually, the RLM2 is the color that shows inside and out. But I am going to spray it with the RLM2 first, so I can. So that way, when it's opened up, it will appear as if the inside of the canopy frames are RLM2 like the rest of the rest of the cockpit. Because if I don't, and I spray my black primer, then the stuff on the inside will be black. Don't want that. So we're going to do that first. Going to use my handy dandy HPM2, and hopefully I won't run out of CO2 because it's starting to get low, so hopefully. All right, so there's that. So I'll clean up the airbrush. All right, so we got the primer in here. Got all my parts ready. So let's see how this works. I'm going to start with flaps. I've got tape to protect the Lm2 part. So I'm just going to So, for those of you who've been following along, I've been experimenting with different airbrushes. And one of those airbrushes is that kind of weird looking Sparmax. So here's one thing I have noticed about that. For paint, it seems to do pretty well. For primer, especially the Stynylrez type primer, not so much. It doesn't seem to atomize the primer enough, and it gets kind of splotchy looking. So I may not be using it as much as originally thought. Still good for some things, but realistically, I'm probably not going to use it for a lot of stuff just because of that. Especially since I got this one fixed. That was part of my problem. So let's see here. Got the back plate of the spinner here. Now this, I'm putting primer on it because, you know, it is an external part of the aircraft. And I want to get a good primer on it because I'm going to spray it white before I do any other colors on it, because I think it's supposed to have some yellow. Do the spinner itself. Trying to, not very successfully, I'm trying to spray this in a way that you can see what I'm doing, but it's really hard. That's a little better. Okay, so we got that. Set that aside. Let's do the propeller. And no, I didn't fill in those things in the back. And you know what? I'm not gonna. A little dab of filler. Nah, I might still do it. Golly. I always tell myself I'm not gonna mess with little things like that, and then I end up doing it. And I probably should. And I probably will, but since I have the primer out, I'll go ahead and prime most of this. And then now when I'm doing the actual main part of the aircraft, I may not be spraying it in a way that you're going to see it, because it's a lot harder to do it with a big, you know, fuselage piece in comparison to these little parts. So let me put a little bit more thinner in, or what do you call that stuff? Primer in there. I'm also going to get me a glove. I don't want to get any fingerprints or anything going on. And get cracking on this. I'll probably demonstrate a little bit of it and then do the rest off camera. All right, I have a glove, got some more primer in here, ready to roll. So we'll start at the back. I think I'll probably just do the top first. The upper surfaces, let that dry, and then do the lower part. Okay, just like that. So I'm going to carry on, come back. All right, here it is. And I was able to maintain the seam along the spine that I wanted, as evidenced after my primer here. I also managed to avoid breaking off the aerial, so I'm good there. So the next thing I need to do is I need to start doing some paint, but I'm going to let this cure really well for a bit, and then we'll come back and take a look at the first coat of paint, or the first parts that I'm going to paint. Got to decide. Okay, so here we go. Paint time. So the first color I'm going to do, I'm doing this a little bit different than what I would usually do, because the first color I want to do is the white Rudder. And the reason I'm doing that is because it'll be easier to mask the Rudder once it's done being painted, instead of trying to you know, mask around everything else and do that white. I could have actually left that off and painted it separately, and I probably would have done that had I been working on a bigger aircraft, but I didn't do that. So this is the way I'm doing this, and it'll be fine. So as my color call outs call for this bloke's plane, it's a white Rudder with yellow on top, and that'll work out good because I can spray this white, which white will be tough covering over dark, but at least I won't have to mess with the yellow. And when I put the yellow on, it'll look a little bit brighter since it's going on a white base. And then once I do a little bit of weathering, it'll tone that down a little bit without making it look too, I don't know, muddy or too dulled out. So I'm going to do my usual mixture of paint. I'm going to use some clear along with my paint and thinner mixture. So let's see. So I'm using X20A thinner, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use I'm going to start out with 0.5 milliliters because I don't think I'm going to need a whole lot of paint for this, and I don't want to mix up too much because I'm getting low on white paint. So I'm going to have to order some. So 0.5 milliliters, and I'm going to use my, and that's still going to be quite a bit of paint actually, but that'll be okay. If I have any left over, I'll use it on the spinner since that's going to be painted white as well. Hopefully I won't forget, so I think I'll set it over here like that. Then I will put 0.5 milliliters of paint, which in this case is XF2 white. In my airbrush, like that. And then using XF22 clear, almost got the flat, that would have been a bummer. XF22 clear, I'm going to put 0.5 milliliters of that. Now if you're watching this video for the first time and you're wondering what I'm doing, what I like to do is when I'm using Tamiya paints, I like to add gloss clear to it. That way it knocks the ultra flat finish back a little bit, so it's not quite so flat. It's more of a semi-gloss looking paint. That way, for those who like, and again, this is not the reason I'm doing it, for the people who like a gloss surface for their decals, this eliminates a step of having to put a gloss on it. You get a nice kind of semi-gloss, and I've never had any problems with decals on that. Also, it just makes the weathering process go a little bit easier. Whether it's using oils, they seem to travel through all of the panel lines and details much better. If I'm using a clay wash, there's less chance of it staining the actual surface quite as much and making it too dark or too light, depending. So that is the main reason I do that. And for those of you who watch my channel a lot and you've heard that story, sorry I'm repeating it, but every time I paint, I like to bring that up for people who may just be tuning into my channel for the first time on a given video. So that is that. So real quick, like, I'm going to clean I'm going to clean my paint dropper here. All right, we're ready to roll here. So let me spray my paint. Got to get a glove. I don't want to smear up my primer job. My greasy fingers after eating a delicious steak meal. And it always helps to open up the CO2 tank when you're going to paint. Yes, indeed, I can be a goober at times, believe it or not. All right, so there we go. So now this is pretty thin and kind of a little bit translucent because of the clear. So if you do this, keep that in mind. Look at that splatter. That's awesome. It'll level out though, but just keep that in mind when you are, if you try this method. And I truly recommend it. So there's that. I got a lot of paint here, so I'm gonna go ahead and paint. Boy, I get some splatter action going on here. I'm not clearing my nozzle before I go. I forget to do that with a single action sometimes. Go ahead and do that on here, and I'll repaint that top part black. Tehachapi Boulevard. Sorry guys, I'm hollering at my wife. She was asking about something. So I'm trying this different camera angle here up higher, and if I'm really careful, the main reason I don't do it is because if I'm not really careful using my iPhone, if I tilt it too far, it does it in portrait mode instead of landscape, and it's a pain to have to try and twist it around in an app. So that is why I usually don't do it, but I kind of like this, and I think I'm going to start using it when I'm doing building. So, you know, just a quick note on that. I kind of like overhead. And I stinking knocked the flipping machine gun off again. That thing has broken off twice, so it's staying over there till I'm ready for it. That's what I hate about those really small, fragile pieces like that. Okay, that looks good. And yellow's going over that, so that's good enough. But you probably can't see it, but it is a little bit translucent, so you have to build it up in layers. But that's what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to clean this airbrush out and come back. Okay, so I'm using my TRN1 for doing this part. And I just have to be real careful because it's a soft edge. I don't want to overspray it too much. So that looks pretty good right there. All right, I'll clean this one up. All right, so there's what we've got. So now I need to make sure it's dry. And then I need to, oh yeah, I need to mask it off so I can start on the next color. So I'm just going to use my old handy dandy Tamiya tape. I have to, hold on a second, I need a glove for that left hand, because this is where I do want to make sure I don't get too much contamination on the primer. So the rudder actuator, or whatever you want to call it, and that's the problem with having my camera up there. I need to make sure I get this lined up because, you know, as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to notch this to make it easier to go around that actuator. Let's see. Because I can always touch that up later with a brush if I need to. As I said in my last video, masking is one of those things that I really don't mind doing. And boy, you should see some of the models that I mask. They can be a real doozy, let me tell you. Notch that a little bit more. I'll have stinking masking tape all over the place and all kinds of crazy configurations. Now, I want to get this as close as humanly possible, but yeah, like that's perfect. That way it got right down into the joint there of the where the rudder connects. So we're good there. So we'll do the same on the other side. All right, the next thing I want to do before I get too far is I plan on doing some weathering and chipping around the wing root. So I'm going to spray a base layer on top of my primer of Vallejo metal color aluminum, and I'm just going to spray it right along the wing roots, and that's it. Because once I get the paint on there, I want to do some hairspray chipping along the edge of the walkways there, you know, from crew service and stuff like that. So I've got my paint all mixed up, and this you don't have to thin, you can shoot it right out of the bottle. It doesn't take much. And then we'll just like that. All right, so there we go. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is the RLM65 on the underneath of the fuselage and the wings. So I'm not real concerned right now. I just need to make sure I need to get above this demarcation line here. Make sure I get the entire underside cowling. And it looks like it's a sharp delineation there, so I'll be taping that off. And then make sure that this part here is correct, where it just kind of goes and then dips down right behind the wing root. But I'm not so much concerned about that right now, because I can control that with the upper camouflage colors. So I just need to do the bottom and get it high enough on the sides. So in looking at my color chart, my RLM color chart, RLM65 is one of the few colors that it shows Tamiya as a single color from Tamiya being a match, or close enough, because RLM colors can be quite a source of contention amongst people talking about German paint. But so that's XF23, and I've used that before on a Heinkel 111 and it looked really good, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to do my same thing where I mix 1 part paint, 1 part thinner, and 1 part clear. So I'll get that mixed up and be ready to go. All right, paint's all mixed up, ready to roll. So let's begin. See if I can do this without breaking that antenna off. I'm gonna make a couple of passes here, so I'm not gonna be getting real crazy with the first layer. Make sure I get it up the front edge of the wing really well. Change it around, grab it by the tail here. Okay. carefully turn it around. Hold it by the cockpit there. Now notice I'm not doing any pre-shading, black basing, any of that kind of stuff. I need to make up some more paint, so hang tight, folks. All right, back to business here. Let's see, where was I? Right there. But as I was saying, I'm not doing any pre-shading or black basing or anything like that, because I'll be doing something else. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to set that aside to dry. We'll come back for the next part. Okay, here we are. So the RLM65 is done, and I must say it looks really cool. And notice it does have a bit of a sheen to it because of the clear that I put in it. So the next thing I need to do is, in order to facilitate my walkways here and chipping them up, I need to put some hairspray. And this is what I'm using. This is extra hold. A lot of people prefer a medium hold, but this is all I had. I've used it before. Works great. So I'm gonna have to do this off camera, but basically I'm gonna give it 2 or 3 light swipes, just right there, and then once that dries, then we can go on to paint. And there you can see where the hairspray is. So it's got to dry, and you know, I can use a hair dryer or whatever, but I'm not going to. The trick is, though, to make sure you get enough on there without getting it too much and too puddly. That's why you do some like 2 or 3 quick swipes. You know, get it wet, as you can see here, but not too wet, because you want the hairspray to be thick enough that your top layer of paint doesn't adhere to the silver underneath, if that makes any sense. You want to have that good barrier between the two, because if you put it too thin, the paint can still get in there, and it'll kind of dissolve the hairspray enough that it will stick to the paint underneath. So you got to be careful. So we'll let that sit and dry for a little bit, and then we'll get ready for a little bit of masking and the upper layer, the first layer of camouflage on the top, which is going to be RLM2. On second thought, yeah, so we need to, oh man, I think I'm going to paint the central portion of this, which is supposed to be silver. So for that, I'm going to use my Vallejo Metal Color Silver. Get that painted up. And let's see, I need to get a designated silver color brush. I think I'm going to use this one. I like to keep my brushes separated as much as I can because silver can be kind of hard to wash out, and you don't want any silver flecks in like camo colors or anything like that. So I'm going to label this one with a piece of the green masking tape. Oh, it's crooked. And yes, I am a flipping maniac when it comes to crooked tape. There we go. That's a little better. It's still not perfect, but it'll do. It's tapered surface, hard to get it straight. So I'm going to write on here. Metals. Okay, so here we go. Put a drop of this. On there, a couple drops actually. And then we will proceed to paint it. You know what? I don't need to hold that like that, so okay, so I'll continue on with this. There it is, ready to roll. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to paint this part black. And I'm not going to be too super picky about it because this part's got a glue on top. So I just mainly want to get the main part of it. It's going to be completely covered. You'll only be able to see a small portion of it, so I'm not too awful worried about it. Now, as you can see, this part is not painted. And that is because it's Lm2. So next time I have my Lm2 out, I'll paint that at the same time. And the next time I'm going to have it out is for whenever I'm doing the, there we go, that's good enough. Start painting on the fuselage. All right, next up is to paint the Lm2 base coat first. So what I've done is mixed me up a fresh batch so I have my ratios properly or correct with my clear and all that. And the formula I use, now I'm pretty sure I got this from the IPMS Stockholm website, and it's formulas for mixing up pretty close colors as far as the German RLM colors. Now I was using this and I did find, I don't remember where I got it, but it says right here, RLM numbers and names, the official monogram painting guide to German aircraft 1935 to 1945, American Hitchcock monogram aviation ISBN number. So these are the ones that they recommend for spraying the RLM colors, monogram that is. Now the RLM02, which is the color I'm spraying, they recommend XF22. Now XF22 is called RLM Gray. Now it's from all of the other RLM2s I've seen, this seems a bit grayer than the mixes I've seen. The mixes I've seen have a little bit of a greenish cast to them. Now hopefully you can see right here. This is the RLM2 that I mixed up using that formula. This gray right here, which is much grayer, is XF22, which is called RLM Gray, the one that they recommend monogram on that sheet. So all of the ones I've seen, regardless of manufacturer, and they can be a shade different, a little bit, but most of them are gray with a greenish cast to them. And so that's why I'm using, instead of using this like I did with the RLM65, which actually is really close, I decided to go ahead and mix up a batch. So don't be afraid to mix up paints. It's really actually very easy, especially on stuff like this. It's XF22 one part to XF49 one part, and that's the RLM Gray, but with the addition of XF49, which is khaki. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there. So I mixed that up along with my thinner and my X22, which is the X22. I never can remember these numbers. Yeah, X22 Tamiya Clear to give me my semi-gloss coat. So I'm going to shake this up real good, and then I'm going to paint this part here, and then paint the upper surfaces of that and of the flaps. Okay, so next color is Lm71. I've got it all taped off and ready to go. Now I'm going to be spraying up close, so I shouldn't have to worry about too much overspray on other parts. And I also have it taped off for here as well. And I mixed up some Lm71, which I used the XF63, as I explained earlier why, and the X22. So I just got to shake it up a little bit. And I put this tape on like as soon as this paint was dry to the touch, and I kept having to pull it off, put it on, pull it off, pull it out, and I had no paint lift at all. So that's just a testament to what do you call it, Tamiya's durability. So just some food for thought for those who might contemplate using Tamiya if you haven't. Something else to note, and you probably can't see it, but it's real subtle. Yeah, I think it's because of using the clear and everything else in there. You get kind of a natural, I don't want to say, it's kind of marbling effect that you can't really see except in real life and when you tilt the plane. Now it may disappear whenever, I've never really paid attention after I clear something, but because a lot of people like to do some variation in their paint job, and well that seems to work. So anyway, let's get cracking here on painting this baby up. Okay, here we go. Okay, so first I'm going to do the flaps. I want to be careful to paint just the surface and not the edges. So I want to keep those RLM02 like the inner workings should be. And then here, be careful and only paint just that little corner like that. And then I'll start spraying this stuff here. So that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to continue on with this off camera so you don't have to watch me do it, and we'll come back and take a look at it once it's time to peel the tape off. All right, so here it is. We'll let it dry up, and then we'll come back and peel the tape off and see how it looks. All right, so here we go. I've already started peeling some of this off, and I thought I'd peel a little bit off on here just so we can see what it looks like, and I just jammed that down on there. So let me see if I can get it peeled up without scuffing my paint. Okay. There we go. That is some pretty groovy contrast going on. And notice that none of this is peeling off any of the paint. Really like the durability of this paint. I know I sing its praises frequently, but you know what? If you find something that works good, you like to spread the word. So that is, let's see, let me pull the rest of this side off here. That looks pretty good. Now I don't have the flap on here obviously, but yeah, I'm digging it. The trick is when masking this stuff off, use your illustrations. You know, if you want to keep it as close as possible. As in this case, I made sure I started my tape at this corner here, which is at the back of the flap, you know, right where it meets the fuselage, the fairing on the fuselage, and it goes up to just barely past this second panel line here, which is here. And as you can see, it bypasses these I'm assuming the fuel filler flaps there by just about the right amount. So that's all there is to taping this stuff off. Use the illustrations if you have them, which normally they're, you know, included with you know, paint schemes or decal sets or whatever. They tend to do a pretty good job of being accurate in their illustrations just for such reasons. So that's the way to do it, and I'm really stoked with the way this is turning out. Now for this one side here, I had to get real creative and cut some really thin strips to match that the edge of the wing root seam, like that. Oh, I'm really stoked that turned out. So that will conclude the primary painting. So I'm going to look at the illustration there, because some of the mottling, I may have to remask some stuff, but I'm just really eager to see what this looks like without the paint. But I put a glove on the wrong hand. So there we go. That's what it looks like. So I'm digging it. So let me take a look at the instructions and see what comes next, and that'll determine what I do next. Okay, so the next part is to spray this mottling on the wings. Then once I get that done, I can move on to the sides. But for this, I need to mix up some, it needs to be Lm2 and that is where I am going to use, and you know what, I told you the wrong color earlier when I said it was XF63. That's not what it was. It was XF, oh, what was it? It was F27. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. So I used XF27 to spray that color there for the RLM71. So for RLM70, I'm going to use German gray, and I'm going to be spraying that freehand in this pattern here and here. All right, so here we are with the colors. And before I start doing the mottling, I've started chipping away at some of where I did the hairspray technique. Now the reason I did that is because, as you can see, especially right here, this is going to be in the walkway. Now my thinking is this, that this aircraft saw some usage before it got this additional add-on uneven camouflage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this on both sides, and then do the sloppy camouflage, the Lm2 over top of that. Then I'll do a little bit more, so there's kind of a layering effect, and then I'll be doing like dirty smudges and stuff, like, you know, foot traffic. But for now, I'm going to demonstrate a little bit and see if I can get this to break through a little quicker than the other one. The chipping part of it. All right, so let's see what we can do here. Now it looks like this side's going to come off a little bit easier. Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna have to hold it in my hand like this, but it's starting to break through a little bit. So just keep scrubbing on it like that, and it starts chipping off. It's kind of nice because it gives it like an actual chipped surface look, as opposed to just, you know, dots of silver paint. See, that's what you get. Now I didn't put anything on top of the silver, so as you can see, or the aluminum, so you can see it's not really coming off. It's not going down to the primer. So I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to have too much going on there. I re-wet this a little bit. Not as much traffic on that side because the pilot enters from this side. So there's that. So now with that, I can move on to the Lm2 on the upper surfaces. Okay, so I've got my Lm2 ready in my bottle, and while I'm doing that, I'm also going to start working on some of the mottling on the actual fuselage, these dark spots. And I'm just going to have to guess because there's no, as far as I know, there's no views from the other side. So I'm just going to have to make do. Okay, and for this spray job, I'll be using the TRN1, so I can do the fine mottling work without too much trouble, hopefully. So all right, so let's get cracking here. So we need to follow this pattern here as close as possible. And I'll need to put some on the flaps as well. So I'll kind of have to eyeball that. Okay, this is black green, so we'll see how this works out. So it starts out here and waves down. That's not going to be exact, but I'll get it as close as I can. And you know what, for doing this, it's the edges, I like to take my protective cap off so I can get down really close and see what I'm doing. Okay. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to get the outline done first. Okay, you get the idea? I'm going to come back. It's too stressful to do it on video. All right, so I got the wings done here and the flaps. Sorry I didn't, you know, do this on camera, but some of the angles I had to do, it'd be impossible for me to actually get it to where you could see it, see what I'm doing. So, you know, I apologize, but that's the way it is. So now I need to, so I got the, that. Now I'll do this back here because I could probably do one of these fairly easily. I'll do this side here, that side there. See what I'm saying? It's hard to. And what's nice about doing it, and this airbrush is really good, and I'm doing it with the needle protector off, and you know, singing the praises of Tamiya paints, no tip dry, nothing like that. It just really works great. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Not well, sorry. So let's see. Get it started. It's not going to be exact, but it'll be close. Close enough for my purpose. Now the really hard part is painting this color over the other dark color. It's really hard to differentiate in my light, so again, bear with me here. Building it up. I'm being real random with it. That way, if there is any showing through, I'm trying to do it like in scale, you know, in scale messy application, because I wouldn't think they'd be real careful in applying it, as far as, you know, making sure it's like 100% opaque. Now, if you get shiny spots doing it this way, let it dry a little bit, then pull back a little bit and get it from an angle, and you can dull it down a little bit. You don't want it too shiny. Okay, so there's that. So I'll do the other one, and we'll start on the mottling on the fuselage. So this is all the random stuff. So this isn't going to match that great, but you know, you just gotta go with what you got. Let's see, let's stick with the top stuff first. This is the tricky part because you got to work on a curve. Oh man, and you got to try and do it without getting overspray everywhere. Again, I'm really having to guess here as to what's going on. That. We'll get back here. So I'm going to continue working on this and we'll come back. All right. Again, sorry I can't show it all on video, but there you go. Got the sides, the first color modeled on there, and that is the RLM 70. So the next color I'll be doing is the RLM 74, but I need to clean my airbrush first, so I'll come back here in a minute. Okay, so we got the RLM 74 going here. Took me a minute to get things balanced out. It was really just flying out. Now, one thing I gotta say about these type of paint scheme directions, don't really like them just because they don't really give good illustrations as to what colors you're doing and stuff, and it's just kind of too groovy in my book. It's pretty heavy right in here. Almost solid. So this is just really ram. I'm not even trying to get even anywhere close to what it shows on this thing, because if I do, I'm going to screw it up. That looks pretty decent. I'll fix that big old splotch right there. So, yeah, it's looking all right. I'm not that stoked with it, really. But, hey, it'll have to do. So I'm going to continue on. All right, so there it is. For good or ill, that's what I got. Had a real problem with that front end there. I may have to tone that down a little bit with some Lm2. But that pretty much, let's see, let's do a little bit more of this. So back here. So yeah, that's not bad. That's okay. I'm gonna have to tone that down with some Lm2 on the front though. So let me clean my airbrush. I'm gonna do that real quick. Okay, so that's quite a bit better. That helped it tone it down a little bit. So yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. So the next thing I'm gonna do is the next thing to do is the decals. So I'm going to stop with this video here. Next time I come back, I will have the masking tape off the front and the back, and I will start applying the decals. Then once the decals are applied, then I can get on with the putting the propeller and spinner on, doing a little bit of spray that needs to go on the spinner, and any other little bits. That should be the only painting I actually have left. And once I get that done, then I can put a clear coat on here, a clear flat coat, and then move on to some detail painting, and then move into weathering. So thanks for joining me here on the 1/48 scale Eduard BF 109E3 weekend edition. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, hints, tips, because I need them, put them in the comments section down below, and I will get back with you all as soon as I can. So as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all later.